Welcome to News 13's Coronavirus Virtual Town Hall Meeting. I'm George Roberts.
And I'm Marie Johns. For the past month, we've been bringing you a variety of topics on how we're being affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
Now, today we'll be discussing small business, what's available to them to assist them financially, and what lawmakers are doing to keep small business afloat during this unprecedented time.
Joining us first on the program is Michelle Young from the Public Policy Team at the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Michelle, great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's first talk about, get right into this federal money. A couple weeks ago, $350 billion in federal funds ran out, and now lawmakers have worked on getting new money, a new rescue bill for business. Let's talk a little bit about this. We've heard different numbers, 320 billion, 370 billion, whatever the number is. What exactly is this going to mean for businesses like in our area?
Yes, last night the Senate passed a $484 billion package. Now that is going to go to the House, and we're expecting a bill tomorrow. Their numbers, as we've seen, look a little bit different, but in the current Senate bill that was passed, there's $370 billion specifically for businesses. 310 of that is a program that you all have been talking about, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. That is the one that the small businesses really wanted because it would reimburse them up to 8 weeks for 75% of their cost within payroll, and 25% they could spend the money on different things like leases and utilities. But whatever the grant was that they got out of the PPP, they were able to reimburse and not have to pay themselves back. So when that money ran out, that was a big problem. So we're thrilled that Congress is now taking action to replenish.
So do you think that all of this that's being done, and things are changing so quickly now, it's really hard to keep up for all of us, and to even understand what it all means, but is everything that our government is doing to try to help small business and to help business in general, is it going to be enough to keep everyone afloat, in your opinion? And what is the demeanor of the people that you're getting to talk to on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer truly. I wish I did, to whether or not it's enough. I do know that the first round of the 350 unfortunately ended up going to quite a number of businesses that may not be in as hard of a place as a lot of our small businesses. This round, I'm very hopeful, is to be focused specifically on what we call our mom and pop shops, all of our small businesses that just have a couple employees, and it's supposed to go into the smaller banks as well. So our community banks would get a fairer shake at trying to get some of this money out to their clients. But there's also been a number of grant programs that people have been putting out there. I know the Chamber, we had one for small businesses, and in an hour, $150,000 was gone. And we put out another $150. What we were doing was trying to give just a $1,500 grant that was not to be returned. That was for each small business that applied to take that and use it for what they need. So I know the community is really focused on trying to help the businesses.
Okay, so that's some federal money we've been discussing and some of the things that the Chamber is doing. Let's talk about on the state level, what is happening in Harrisburg to help small business?
Well, you know, there's a lot of discussion, we'll call it discussion, some conflict going on between what is the right thing to do. And everyone wants business to return safely. Obviously, business's number one concern is the employee base. So we understand that, and we understand there needs to be many precautions. There was legislation that was passed on Friday, or actually earlier last week, but the governor did veto that legislation because it would have restarted businesses now. The governor has announced that May 8th is his target date as to when we will start reopening businesses. So there's a lot of concern, and as Marie said, great uncertainty as to what that means. The governor is looking at it region by region, depending on the numbers. the White House has recommended that to reopen, our cases of coronavirus should be going down for 14 days in a row. We did go down on Monday. However, then yesterday it went back up. So then we started over today and our cases did go down. So business is watching that as well very closely to see how quickly we can open. The Monroe area, Carbon is faring pretty well, but Monroe, the Lehigh Valley, our cases are higher, a lot higher in some cases than many other counties. So the question is, are we last to reopen? We don't know.
Mm-hmm. So that May 8th date is going to be a floating date as far as how much reopens, in your opinion,
Yes.
starting over on that 14 days every time we get new numbers?
That is the White House recommendation. The governor has said that he is looking at it from a data perspective. He has not come out and said he's using the 14 days, but he did say May 8th would be the first one. Now, one thing that we were able to get done that was really good for business was to be able to reopen our car sales online. They were waiting for notaries to be able to use the online service. And now construction is another one that over the entire state, the governor said as of May 8th, construction will be able to start getting back in again. That was an industry that they were very concerned, calling us a lot because a lot of them work outside and are spread apart. So they really wanted to get back to work.
Michelle, I would imagine that it's going to be a slow rollout with different types of industries. In other words, there's certain types, like we talked about the car dealers, being able to do online sales. So they're going to do this, I would imagine, in stages. You're not going to, the point of allowing the PPL Center to open where you have so many thousands of people in one place is probably farther away than, say, a salon opening.
Yes, I, for one, am very anxious for the salons to open. I can say that's pretty much across the board, but not to make light of it, sorry. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be determined by area and then by business. And we've been talking about it in our own locations of the chamber. What we don't know, we're trying to plan ahead. Do we do one person in the office at a time for a while and then keep raising those numbers? So it is definitely fluid day by day. And I think one of the other things just to say about small businesses for you is one thing the government did do was in the original CARES Act, they enabled business that are self-employed, so small businesses that are actually self-employed, they're independent contractors or they're gig workers, they were able to apply for unemployment. That is not usually allowed, but that was put through, and the state system was up as of Saturday for those people to start getting in the system to apply.
Mm-hmm. So as we start getting back to work and the groups that have been given the go-ahead, like you said, construction for one of their concerns has to be, okay, I have a small construction company, I can get back to work, but gee, nobody has money. If I don't have projects that have been stopped that I can restart, are there going to be new projects out there for me to do at this point, and what do I do?
You're right, and that is a concern. However, I will say from a positive end, we have had calls from those businesses that do have projects that were planned and that they really want to get to work on, a lot of summer projects. So we are hopeful that a lot of business will get done with that.
Michelle, let's talk about small business owners that maybe don't know what to do. They're like deer with their eyes frozen in the headlights. Yes. Because all of a sudden they've been hit with all these different programs and things. And I've talked to at least one that doesn't know where to go and is actually considering bankruptcy. What are your suggestions if somebody, we're talking about these businesses that don't have a lot of capital. Some of them were working week to week with the money they brought in, kept them going. That's how they paid the bills. They didn't have a lot of money put away. What do we say to these kind of businesses? Where do they go? Where should they start?
Well, that was the biggest complaint that we were hearing, and rightly so. When I said that the system just opened up this weekend, we're at April. And so for a month, these small businesses that were so small that they weren't sitting on 2 months of their rent and money to be able to pay their employees. And they've been really living off of just what they have. We are hopeful that people now will be able to get some of these loans. The different loan programs, they are confusing to look at, but if you need money right now, people are recommending that you look at what is called the EIDL, because that one has an advance amount of cash. And I have heard from business people that they used that one because the cash was going to come in quicker than that of the PPP. However, the PPP is an 8-week return of your 75% payroll, 25% other costs. And so it could turn out to be more. So it is a struggle. It's such an individualized thing that I've been talking to people, they go to their attorney, the small business people that really don't even want to go and ask for that help because they know it's going to just cost them more money. But luckily, a lot of people are helping each other. I have seen more of that now than ever, and they're giving each other breaks wherever they can.
Mm-hmm. What has this been like for you at the Chamber, changing so quickly, and you having to stay on the cusp of what's happening to then help the businesses that are calling you? I feel you probably are starting over with the conversation from scratch each time you get a new phone call.
Yes, there is definitely a lot of that people either they did apply and they weren't able to get that money, and now they're looking again at applying, but they don't want to get their hopes up, but yet they want to plan on being able to know that they have a loan coming in. It is such a crazy time for people. I think that's why you're seeing the food banks overflowing and all of the different food sources that people that never had taken what is considered a handout are out there, and they're really needing help. So I would say, yes, it is every individual call. We take them. I have 2 other members on our public policy team, and we've been working pretty much around the clock, and we talk to people early, we talk to people late. These are our members, and we care, and we're here for them.
Michelle, one more thing before you go. Well, let's talk a little bit about these applications that businesses are filling out. There's all kinds of questions on them, and some of them require certifications and different things like that. How important is it that you understand what it is that you're signing up for? And how important is it to read every question carefully? Could you be liable for saying the wrong thing with these applications?
Well, the president referred to that last night in his address, that some of the organizations he thought may have fibbed a bit on their paperwork. But I think the government at this point was just so focused on getting it out. But I think small businesses, they've been calling with questions on the application. I know that the SBA is difficult to get through to, but they are the experts. They're the ones that are the Small Business Administration. They are the ones that are putting that out there. But yes, it is so important to look at every question because you don't want to be kicked out of the system for one mishap.
Absolutely not. Well, Michelle, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing, because I know that the businesses really, really appreciate it and need someone like you that's staying on top of everything the best you can. I know it's a lot, right?
Well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all when we're back to normal. Going out to lunch and to dinner and for coffee and to the dry cleaners, everything else. And don't forget the salon.
All right. Yes, I'll go with you. How about we go together?
Sounds good.
Thanks,
It's a
Michelle.
girls' day.
Thank you.
Thank you, George, too.
Now on News 13's Coronavirus Virtual Town Hall, let's discuss financial assistance for small business.
Joining us next is Gino DeGiosio, Vice President of Commercial Lending at Jim Thorpe Neighborhood Bank. Thank you, Gino, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, I know this has been an unprecedented time for all of us, but I know in your office, you've been dealing with an awful lot of business people who need help, haven't you?
Oh, it's unprecedented. I've been doing this for 20 years, and in that period of time, never seen anything like it.
The Paycheck Protection Program, I know that's what you've been kind of in since this whole thing began, as soon as the first money became available, and now we're hoping that more money is becoming available through that program. Tell us what exactly that is for the person sitting at home who's just been, kind of staying away from all this or not sure where they should go.
Sure. The Paycheck Protection Program is a short-term loan that's provided by the Small Business Administration. It's guaranteed by them. And what the spirit of the program is to help small businesses that are dealing with some really strong economic times, difficult times, I should say, unlike anything we've ever seen before. It allows them to have 2 months of payroll costs to keep individuals keeping them employed, and if they had laid people off, to bring them back.
Okay.
Now
the loan. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask a little bit about the loan itself. What is the loan? What's it look like? Do you have to pay this back?
That's a great question. The loan is structured over a 2-year period, the first 6 months of which there's no payment to be made. All right. The loan has an interest rate of 1%, and if you use the proceeds from the loan in the intention where 75% of that or more is used for payroll costs, then the entire amount will be forgiven.
What is the max that a business is able to borrow or apply for? Is that how it works, or is it determined for them?
Sure, no, the maximum is $10 million, but there's some criteria in terms of what they qualify for. And simply put, the amount that they qualify for would be, let's just say, for example, you take a business that had $120,000 in payroll costs in 2019, okay? You would get an average monthly payroll cost in this particular scenario would be $10,000 per month. And then you would multiply that by 2.5. The 2 portion representing 2 months of payroll costs for their employees. And that other 0.5% that I'm speaking about, that's used for the businesses to use for interest expenses on mortgages, utility costs, or rent costs. And as long as they use that money in that fashion, then they have an option, or they have a forgiveness portion at the end of the loan, which will be 8 weeks after the loan was issued. They can apply for forgiveness.
Gino, have you run into any businesses that have said to you, well, I don't know if I'm going to be open yet in 8 weeks. Maybe this isn't going to work for me because, I run a business that's not really even open at the moment. Have you talked to anybody like that?
Yes. In fact, there's a couple of people. But what they did was they applied thinking that perhaps maybe that vision that they had of a longer turnaround time could be shorter. So they don't have to take the money. They can certainly apply, but if they choose not to take it, that's up to them from a business decision standpoint.
Okay.
Now, we've heard from a lot of businesses that, it's complicated. Everybody's trying to learn so much so quickly and find the right way to go. And you've heard of some people getting money quickly and some people not even being able to figure out how to apply. Have you been dealing mostly with customers or new businesses coming to you asking for help? How has it been working for you?
Well, our primary focus is to service our existing customers. But we're certainly conscious of some of the challenges other business owners are having. And they express some challenges, especially with their process and with some larger banks and their inability to manage the volume in a swift fashion. So they had come to us thinking that maybe a smaller bank can serve their needs a little more swiftly.
And has that been happening?
Oh, it's been happening, yes. Right now, we have in the pipeline to be serviced under the new money that's coming out, about 40 applications. Of those 40 applications, probably 20 of them are from referrals that we got from existing customers that we already funded. They like their experience, and they're coming to us to see if we can help them out.
What types of businesses can apply for this PPP?
It's really broad-based, George. Any kind of business, as long as they don't have more than 500 employees, that's the SBA rules for a small business, 500 employees or greater. If they have less than 500 employees, they can qualify. Now, there are some things about residency. They have to be a U.S. resident. They can't have had a felony in the last 5 years. They can't be currently under indictment. But for the most part, your general and viewing audience would qualify.
What is the actual process? Is it difficult for somebody, a business person that's never done this before, to get through the application and to actually, get everything they need to get together for you?
Yeah. Well, the intent of the administration was to get this money out as swiftly as possible on the street, right? So the loan process normally would take several weeks to complete. What they had done was they developed an application. It's simply a 2-page application where they're attesting to the information on that. And by attesting to that, it eliminates a lot of the bank's underwriting that would be associated with and take time. So the application is extremely swift. Like I said, it's a 2-page application. And when they submit it to the bank, we have to put it into a system called eTran, which is the SBA portal where applications are accepted. Once I have a full package and all the application information has been verified by the bank to be correct, then what we could do is enter it into the eTran system, and we automatically get a funding number. These are all guaranteed loans. So once we have that funding number, that allows us to move forward with settlement and give the individuals checks. It's not been uncommon where we had an applicant file one day and the next day they received the money.
So the businesses don't have to put up any collateral for this, Gino? This is guaranteed by the SBA?
Exactly. Yep. There's no collateral involved, which generally takes time. If you're looking at a purchase of real estate, there's appraisals, title insurance that comes along with it. There's nothing like that in this program.
Wow. Nice.
And I got to be honest, this, for how fast this came down from when the Senate passed the bill, then it went to the Treasury and it had to be distilled down into the SBA, and then eventually coming to the banks with a program and a process how to put this money out in the streets is unprecedented. I can't believe they did it. It really is. They should be recognized for how swiftly this came through.
Well, good
Absolutely.
to hear.
Yeah, very important that it happened that way, and thankfully it did. How about challenges? Have there been challenges along the way? There have to have been, because it can't. I'm sure it didn't go completely smoothly, right?
Oh, no, not at all. I'll talk about challenges in twofold. One was a challenge that we had. Our bank is a small bank, and we hadn't done many SBA loans in quite some time. And we had to get hooked up onto the eTran system and get onboarded. And thanks to our SBA representative, Gino DeGiosio, and Congressman Musser, they helped us streamline that process where we were up and running in a relatively short amount of time. And as such, we're able to take more applications and serve more people. So that was one aspect that was a challenge. The other aspect is, we spoke about how quickly this process was laid out to the banks. Well, what they did was they have a ruling in terms of what needs to be done, and that ruling is really front-loaded. A lot of the questions that we have as this evolves out and moves towards the back end of the process, such as when people are asking for forgiveness and it converts into a loan, some of the questions that the banks have at this point are unanswered. So that's a little frustrating, but we'll get our guidance eventually.
Okay. Let's just go over this again for everybody watching at home. As far as the funds and how they're supposed to be used, let's go over this again for people. The PPE, when this money that's available that they're getting through your bank but guaranteed by the SBA, what do they need to use this money for?
Well, the spirit of the program is to keep people on the books, right? Not to lay anybody off. So 75% of what they applied for from a loan standpoint has to be used to pay payroll costs. The other 25% of that loan, let's just say it was $100,000 loan, okay? $75,000 of that has to go to payroll costs. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's just salary. There's other aspects of payroll costs that are included in there. And for the scope of this conversation, I'm not going to go into all of them. But it's not just salary that's included in that. Now, that other 25% that I mentioned, I guess the spirit of the program was you think, all right, well, we have employees out there and they're working. Chances are there's a business that's working out of a building. They have costs associated with keeping their building maintained. So the interest expense, if they have a mortgage, is something that would be used for that 25%. If they're paying rent from a building that they're renting, that can be used for that 25%. And then the other portion of it is utility costs.
As far as the interest in the program, I know that a lot of business people were kind of trying to figure out, can I do this? Should I do this? Am I still going to be around after this is all over? Have you been dealing with those kind of questions as to whether somebody should even launch into this?
Yes. I see that more in like the restaurant business, where some of the employees are now collecting unemployment, and some of the business owners are saying it's hard for them to come back, and they're not sure whether or not they're going to be up and running in another 8 weeks. How's the openness of business at that point? So those individuals that do have that concern, we let them make the decision. We suggest it's worth it to apply if you feel differently. Maybe things will move a little quicker, as I mentioned before, and then the money will be there for you.
But it could affect the forgiveness part of it, right? If it doesn't work out the way they are thinking it will.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that's a great point. And we stress to everybody that's applying for this that if you don't use the proceeds in accordance with the 75 and 25% rule, they could jeopardize their amount of forgiveness. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of it is going to be not forgiven. A portion of it could be. Doesn't necessarily mean all of it would be. And the way that works is after that 8-week period, they'll come to the bank and they'll present to us how they use those funds. And as long as they can corroborate that the funds were used in the way that was intended, then it'll be forgiven. So it's really the bank that makes that decision.
Okay, so if it's turned
and that's why.
Go ahead, Gino. Sorry.
No, what I was going to say is that's why we strongly urge, especially the larger businesses that are getting a lot more money, to seek the advice of your accountant and your payroll company so that all of that information could be presented to us. So whenever that time comes, it's just a quick cursory review and we say, all right, everything we used for the purpose, this is now forgiven.
Still a great loan at 18 months at 1%, but
yes.
If they wanted to pay that back quicker, if they wanted to pay that back, ahead of time, they because they didn't want to have the loan hanging around, can they do that if they get to that point?
Sure, they could. Yeah, okay. They could pay it off if they choose to. If they have a windfall for whatever reason, they have the extra money, they can make principal payments on it.
Okay.
We would encourage that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, from the forgiveness standpoint, there is, some of these loans, you take say a $500,000 loan that somebody's getting, and they fail to pass the forgiveness test, and that $500,000 loan is amortized over 18 months. That's a substantial monthly payment. So we're making sure that they're cognizant of that.
All right. Well, Gino, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and keep going out there. I know there's a lot more work to be done. We want to thank both of our guests for joining us on today's coronavirus virtual town hall meeting.
And thank you for watching. Don't forget, for the latest local news on the coronavirus, watch News 13's Pocono Valley and Night Reports right here.